Welcome back to the Morning Kickoff Show. I'm your host, Matt Witt. Today we are back to preview a Minnesota Vikings football game. This week, week 3, the Minnesota Vikings will host the Detroit Lions, division rival, at home Sunday, 12 o'clock on Fox. Both teams are 1-1 in the division. In fact, all teams are 1-1 in this division right now. And this week, right now, we are facing for that top spot of this division. Technically, we do have the tiebreaker right now after beating the Green Bay Packers. However, this would give us 2 divisional games, 2 divisional wins to start out the season, and it would be a great start to what should be a great season. Looking at the Minnesota Vikings, can the Minnesota Vikings bounce back from this humiliating Monday Night Football loss that we just all have a bad taste in our mouth from? Absolutely, we can. The Philadelphia Eagles are outstanding, and we saw this against both of these teams. Both the Vikings and Detroit Lions' only loss this season is to the Eagles, and respectfully so. Looking at this, a lot needs to change for this Minnesota Vikings team. A lot. And looking at the Detroit Lions, this is a team who, like the Vikings, have had a very respectful start to their season. This last offseason, I mentioned how the Detroit Lions are the most improved team in this division, and that is looking to be true. After in just 2 weeks, the Detroit Lions offense is third in yards and second in points. That is unbelievable. When was the last time you could say a Detroit Lions offense have had this great of a start to the season? And this is primarily due to a few guys. First of all, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who has stepped up as a great wide receiver one, a player I had no idea ever existed coming out of college, steps up on this Detroit Lions team against a not very competitive wide receiver room and completely takes that wide receiver one role. On top of that, DeAndre Swift has started out what should be a breakout season for him. This offense does look great. And credit to this offensive line for the Detroit Lions, as well as their offensive line is looking like a top 5 O-line in this league. Have suffered with some injuries, unfortunately. A lot of Detroit Lions have suffered with a lot of injuries. Let's get into that right now. The Lions have had a few injuries to some core players on their team. First of all, Aiden Hutchinson, the second overall draft pick from this last year, is questionable to play in this game with a thigh injury. He did not participate during Wednesday's practice. Same goes for Jonah Jackson. Their stud starting left guard is also questionable to play in this game. This is a finger injury, did not participate this week. We also have DeAndre Swift, who did not participate with an ankle injury. 3 core players on their team right there, as well as TJ Hawkinson, Awarie, and Ragno, who are all questionable play in this game and were limited during Wednesday's practice. Looking at the Minnesota Vikings injury report, we just have a couple players on our DBs. Andrew Booth Jr. and Harrison Smith both did not participate yet this week. Andrew Booth Jr. still suffering with his quad injury. And then outside of this, some players on the Detroit Lions in IR and PUP list who you will not see in this game. Romeo Okwara, who has suffered with a lot of injuries for them, their edge rusher. Vaitai, their starting right guard, will not play in this game. Jameson Williams, who they traded up with us in this draft to draft in the first round, will not play in this game. And Jason Kabinda, their starting fullback, will not play in this game. Jameson Williams, an interesting one. I'm curious to see what his role is going to be when he comes back. With Amon-Ra St. Brown stepping up, DJ Chark having a solid start, Quintez Cephas showing a lot of promise. No, they're going to find a place for Jameson Williams. That was one of the best deep threats coming out of college. So how can we beat the Detroit Lions? I have selected 5 things. Yes, I found 5 things that need to change this week compared to last week. And I could make a list of 30 things that had to change going into this week. However, I'm just focusing on solely how we can beat the Detroit Lions here. Number 1, 3 and 4 wide receiver sets. Okay, you saw a lot of this the last 2 weeks with the Vikings. You saw 3 or 4 wide receivers out there. Kirk drops back to pass, and he stares down Justin Jefferson. It worked week 1. You air it out. Justin Jefferson's going to be open eventually. At least this was in week 1. Found out he would be open. You hit him. Boom. He's having a field day. Perfect. Week 2, the Minnesota Vikings run the same offense. 3 or 4 wide receivers are out there. However, the Philadelphia Eagles come with a different defensive scheme than the Green Bay Packers. They throw their best corner, Darius Slay, on Justin Jefferson just about the entirety of the game, with a safety playing over the top who is watching Jefferson like a hawk. I would expect that the Detroit Lions watch that game, that Monday Night Football loss, and are planning to do the same thing in this game. So fine. Justin Jefferson's elite. Drop back to pass. You can look at Jefferson as your first read on just about every pass. Fine. Go through your reads, Kirk Cousins. There are multiple weapons on this offense. Multiple weapons. And also, I want to mention, they're probably going to be blitzing us a lot like the Eagles did last week. They would blitz. Kirk Cousins just throws it in Justin Jefferson's direction. And most of the time last week, he did not come down with it. You can blame who you want to blame for that. That aside, looking at this, you have so many elite players on this offense. Adam Thielen, give him a bigger role this week. KJ Osborne, give him a reason why he should want to play on the Minnesota Vikings. Okay, this is such a good receiver who should step up and be our wide receiver 2 in the future. Maybe. We're going to have to wait and see. Outside of this, maybe we see Jalen Reagor get some more targets. Maybe we see our tight ends line up inside the slot more often. I don't know. I don't care what Kevin O'Connell's plan is. Just, it goes without saying that Kirk Cousins has to go through his reads. It goes without saying that, yes, Justin Jefferson is elite. Justin Jefferson is a top 3 receiver in the league. However, you have a lot of playmakers on your offense that you can give the ball to. I like to see how the Vikings did utilize Irv Smith Jr. a lot more last week. Yes, it didn't go well, but they were giving Irv Smith Jr. a chance, and I would expect to see more of him going forward this season as the season goes on. He didn't have a great day, but I would expect to see Irv Smith Jr. have a bigger workload later in this season. Number 2, more I formation. Okay, this is my personal preference. If this doesn't happen, perfectly fine. I am just the biggest CJ Ham fan all day, hammer time. CJ Ham has been the secret ingredient to Dalvin Cook's success. And I've said this multiple times in the show. Dalvin Cook has not had the best start to the season. He doesn't look like the same explosive and shifty back that we've seen him the last 3 seasons. However, with that being said, our offense is not designed to make Dalvin Cook work. Our offense is designed to revolve around the pass game. Now, maybe we don't see more I formation. I don't remember. I only can recall the Kevin O'Connell calling 1 I formation play so far this season. But if you want to use Dalvin Cook successfully, this is proven to work. Is CJ Ham and CJ Ham being the lead blocker for Dalvin Cook. I would like to see more of this going forward. Number 3, getting to Jared Goff. Okay, easier said than done. With their offensive line, this is easier said than done. However, we have Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter. We have players who are great at blitzing. The reason why we didn't blitz last week against the Philadelphia Eagles very often, I couldn't tell you. The reason why we didn't change our defensive scheme whatsoever last week, I have no explanation for. Get to Jared Goff. Jared Goff has a history of bad performances when under pressure, just like our quarterback. Both of these quarterbacks are pocket passer quarterbacks who under pressure do make a lot of mistakes, as we've seen in the past. Get to Jared Goff. If you can't get to Jared Goff with Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter, which would be a surprise, all respect to Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell, if you can't get to Goff with those 2 guys, you can always find other options. Those are not your only 2 pass rushers right there. Danielle Hunter or DJ Wanham has been incredible. You could throw all 3 of those guys up there at one time. Blitzing Jordan Hicks. Jordan Hicks is fast. Or maybe you blitz Eric Kendricks. I'm not the biggest fan of blitzing Eric Kendricks, but whatever you do, get to Jared Goff. Easier said than done against their offensive line. Excited to see what this Vikings defensive scheme is in this matchup. I have mentioned many times how I don't have a lot of faith on this Vikings defense, as a lot of Vikings fans do. At the end of the day, we should be able to rush every quarterback with the talent that we have at the edge rushing position. And then number 4 on this list, unpredictable in the red zone. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit heated. I'm talking about things that need to change from last week. This is one thing that has to change. The fact that we were given great field possession on 2 of our drives and we threw an interception is mind-blowing when you look at the talent that this offense has. Justin Jefferson is not the only guy on your offense. He can be your first read in just about every play that you run because he's that good, but you have to be unpredictable. The Eagles knew that the ball was going to Justin Jefferson when the Vikings had the ball at the 9-yard line, at the Eagles' 9-yard line, and they threw an interception. This should not be possible at all when you have Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne, Irv Smith Jr. I'm still putting him on the list because I am huge on Irv Smith Jr. Dalvin Cook, play him inside the slot. Do what you want with him. I don't care. You have so many great playmakers on this offense that the ball can go to in the red zone. The best offense is an unpredictable offense. You're a predictable offense. You throw a man-to-man on Justin Jefferson and have a safety play over the top who's watching him like a hawk. Fine. Defenses are going to do that against your best wideout when he's as talented as Jefferson is. You have multiple other playmakers in this game. Adam Thielen is known to be a great red zone threat as well. The reason why we haven't targeted him in the red zone at all yet this year, I don't understand. Excited to see what Adam Thielen can do the remainder of the season. Hopefully he does bounce back this week. And then number 5, another thing, kind of in the same category. Come prepared. Why do I even have to put this on my list? The fact that the Vikings last week gave up 24 points in the first half and going into the second half didn't change a thing blew my mind. And I'm looking specifically at Ed Donatell here. However, the offense was the same way. Kirk Cousins dropping back to pass, staring down Justin Jefferson, eventually being pressured, and just throwing it up to see if Jefferson comes down with it. Did not work. It might have worked week 1. It did not work in week 2. It is so early in the season to where things are going to change going forward. If the Vikings had the same performance they had on Monday Night Football, maybe in November, December, I might be very concerned, like a lot of Vikings fans are. We are overreacting from a week 2 performance. We have seen multiple teams look bad in the first part of the season, and I'm not even going to say the Vikings look bad, have a rough start to their season and come up with the number 1 seed in the playoffs. One team to think about here. How about the 2017, I think it was, Minnesota Vikings, who didn't have a great start to their season, and it ended with a 13-3 record, which was tied with the best record in the league. I mean, people are overreacting. If we had the same performance we had on Monday Night Football in November, in December, it might be a different story. But everything needs to change. Everything needs to change this week. You can't run the same offense and defensive scheme you did week 2. Things have got to change. Now, on to the bold prediction. Bold prediction of the week. This is a very bold prediction. Kirk will be the offensive player of the week. The NFC offensive player of the week. Kirk has a history of great performances on just random 12 o'clock home games. He does. I don't know what is with this quarterback to where one game he could look like he doesn't even deserve a roster spot, to the next looking like Joe Montana, the next looking like prime Tom Brady. I mean, I don't understand what is with this quarterback inconsistency we have seen over the years, but I'm going to go with that Kirk Cousins has a bounce back game this week against the Detroit Lions at home at a 12 o'clock game. Sometimes Kirk Cousins looks like the best quarterback in history just randomly on a 12 o'clock game. Final prediction, the Minnesota Vikings will win this game in a high scoring game. I am so confident that this Vikings offense will bounce back. This is my personal prediction, and I have the Vikings dropping 41 points on the Detroit Lions. Yes, that's a very bold prediction. It likely will not happen. Having over 40 points in a game is not seen very often, and I believe that the Detroit Lions offense will have a respectful 30 bomb on this Vikings defense because, like I've mentioned many times, I'm not as high on this Vikings secondary as a lot of people are. But things can change. I would like to see Lewis Cine start this game. I don't want to see Cam Bynum play after the performance he had last week. Obviously, this is Ed Donatell's decision, and I don't trust mine as much as I would trust his because at the end of the day, we haven't seen Lewis Cine play in practice. We haven't seen him play in training camp, so we don't really know how the player is going to look this early in his career, if he is going to be better than Cam Bynum, who Cam Bynum has had some great games. One game it might be overreacting to bench him, but I would like to see at least Lewis Cine play a bigger role this week. I would like to see that. Still, even though I'm not as high on this Vikings defense as a lot of people are, and I'm so high on this Vikings offense, things can change. It's only week 3 now. Things can obviously change going forward, and I'm so excited to see how the Vikings plan to run a different scheme this week than they did last week. Let me know what y'all think.